At the head table of the Asante Grand Hotel on Harper Road, Kumasi, in front of 47 dinner guests and 2 waiters who froze mid-pour, Lekan Adesanya slid a brown envelope across the white linen tablecloth and said, "I need you gone before the speeches start." Kezia looked at the envelope. She did not touch it. She set both her hands in her lap. Her spine did not curve. Her chin did not drop. Only her eyes moved once slowly, from the envelope to his face, and then to the candles burning between them, as though she were measuring the distance between light and dark. Some doors are not closed on you. They are closed for you. And what no one at that table understood, not Lekan, not his mother in her green brocade, not the woman already positioned near the far window in a gold dress, was that Kezia had been ready for this door for a very long time. Stay with me through every part of this story. And if no one has told you today, you are worth so much more than what they left you with. The Asante Grand Hotel's private banquet hall had been booked for 18 months in advance. 47 guests, Lekan's colleagues from Northgate Capital, his secondary school friends, 2 of his uncles and their wives, a journalist friend who had already set his phone on the table face up. All of them had dressed carefully for this evening, the promotion dinner, the celebration of a man. The smell in the room was groundnut soup and expensive cologne and the particular warmth of a hall that has been closed too long. Kezia wore a plain, dusty rose dress, no beading, no drama, a dress that cost nothing and fit like a quiet statement. When Lekan slid the envelope, the woman beside the window noticed first. A waiter near the left side stopped pouring. Then the journalist turned his phone over, face down, which was, in its own way, a mercy. The silence that followed was the kind that fills a room from the ceiling down. Lekan stood. He had not needed to stand. He chose to. "This house," he said, and his voice carried to every corner, "was built by my sweat, my name, my relationships. And I have spent 6 years trying to bring a woman up to the level that this life requires, and I will not, enter this next chapter dragging dead weight." He gestured at her plain dress, her bare neck, her close-cropped hair that had no extensions in it. Mama Stella, his mother, set down her fork gently and said, loud enough for the table behind them, "A man of his position needs a woman who can stand beside him. Some women are built for the background, and some, well, not every chair belongs at every table." Ife, the sister, laughed once through her nose and lifted her phone. "Subscribe if this story is making your chest tight. We go deep here." Vivienne crossed the room in a gown the color of hammered gold, each step deliberate, each step landing like a decision already made. Her sunglasses, indoors at dinner under chandelier light, she did not remove. She smoothed the front of her dress with 2 fingers, a gesture that said she had done this before. She stopped beside Lekan and rested one hand on the back of his chair. She looked at Kezia once. "There's no reason for this to be ugly," she said, her voice cool as marble. "You always knew you were temporary, sweetheart. Some of us were just polite enough not to say it out loud." Kezia breathed through her nose. Once. She reached forward and touched the edge of the brown envelope without picking it up, just one fingertip on its corner, reading it the way a woman reads a thing she has already understood. Then she withdrew her hand. She stood, slowly, the way a building stands, not rising but simply being tall. The room watched her face for the crack. There was none. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were clear and bottomless. She looked at Lekan, not at Vivienne, not at Mama Stella, only at him, and she held his gaze for 7 full seconds while the candles between them threw gold across her cheekbones. Then she said, very quietly, "You have just given me permission to be exactly who I am." The room did not know what to do with that sentence. Neither did he. She did not take the envelope. She picked up only the small beaded clutch she had carried in. Black, plain, barely bigger than a fist. She pushed her chair in. She touched nothing else at that table. Not the water glass. Not the folded napkin. Not the bread roll she had not eaten. She walked toward the door. Not fast, not slow. The walk of a woman who has decided something irrevocable on her way to her feet. At the threshold, she paused for one moment, not to look back at Lekan, but at the two waiters who stood frozen against the wall. She nodded at them once, the way you nod at someone who did their job well. Then she stepped through. The door swung shut behind her without a sound. Outside, in the warm Kumasi night air on Harper Road, she reached into the clutch. Her fingers closed around it before she even looked. She had found it 1,000 times in the dark. A watch. Old. Its face scratched at the 9. Its leather strap replaced twice and beginning to fray at the edge again. The crystal over the face was clouded at the corners. The second hand moved. It had always moved. Lekan had seen it on her wrist once and asked why she wore a broken watch. And she had only said, because it still knows what time it is. She held it in her palm and looked at it in the streetlight. Her father had given it to her the night before she left for university. She had never taken it off at night. Some things you carry not because they are beautiful, but because they are true. 50 meters down Harper Road, outside a small provision shop still lit at this hour, an older woman in a yellow house dress and worn slippers was sweeping her front step. She looked up at Kezia, at the plain dress, the small clutch, the woman walking with too much composure. For someone who had just come from a party, "Sister," the woman said, pausing her broom. "You all right? You look like somebody who just came from a battle they didn't start." Kezia stopped walking. A small, tired smile moved across her face. "I'm fine, Auntie," she said. "I've just been released from something that was too small for me." She touched the woman's hand once, gently, and kept walking. The old woman watched her go and said nothing more. Some exits do not require commentary. At the far end of the road, parked beneath the wide canopy of a neem tree, was a dark car, black. Its engine running, a sound barely above a hum, just enough to register as presence rather than coincidence. Kezia saw it. She had seen a car like this before. On the night she sat in the hospital with Mama Stella, the night Lekan did not come, and the afternoon she had stood outside the bank after signing papers. She had not been given time to read. A dark car, always distant, always present, always leaving before she could think to wonder. She did not walk toward it. She did not look away from it either. She held the watch in her fist and kept walking. The narrator says, "Not every protection announces itself. Some love guards from a distance so you can believe you found your own way." To understand why this night was always going to end this way, you have to leave Harper Road and leave the Asante Grand Hotel and leave Kumasi as it is tonight and go back. Back to a different neighborhood, back to a different decade, back to before Lekan's name was ever written in any chapter of Kezia's life, because what Kezia was carrying on that road was not the grief of one dinner, it was the inheritance of a man the world had never been permitted to fully see. We're about to go back to where it all started. Stay with me, the part that changes everything is coming. The house on Osei Lane in the Adam district of Kumasi was not a house that called attention to itself. A modest brick structure, painted white many years ago and now the color of old paper. The compound was swept every morning before sunrise. The wooden gate needed a new latch since 1997 and never got one, because the man who lived there preferred to fix the things that actually broke. And a gate that merely tilted was not yet broken. Baba Yusuf was known on Osei Lane as a transport man. He kept 3 minibuses. He drove one himself on Tuesdays and Thursdays. His passengers liked him because he did not overcharge. His neighbors liked him because he did not gossip. He traveled to Accra, sometimes to Takoradi, occasionally for weeks at a stretch. But he always came back, and when he came back he always asked the same question of his daughter. "What did you learn while I was gone?" The neighborhood knew one version of Baba Yusuf. There were other versions. Baba Yusuf did not correct them. The year Kezia was 9, a boy at her school, destroyed the science project she had spent 3 weeks building, a small working model of the solar system made from wire and painted bottle caps. And when she came home with the broken pieces in a bag, she did not cry until she reached the kitchen. And then she cried very hard. Baba Yusuf sat across from her at the small wooden table. He did not tell her she was too old to cry. He did not rush to fix the model. He sat with her until the crying was done. Then he said, "Kezia, listen to me. Build where they cannot see. Harvest when they have given up looking." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "But he broke it, Baba, in front of everyone." "Yes," he said. "He could only break what he could see." He tapped the side of her head gently. "He cannot get in here. That is where the real project lives." She did not fully understand it. She was 9, but she folded it somewhere deep and kept it. When Kezia was 12, the school fees ran short in the second term. There had been a quiet difficulty in the house. She sensed it the way children sense things, through closed doors and careful silences. She had already decided she would ask her teacher about a payment plan. The letter came on a Thursday. It was addressed to Baba Yusuf from the school administration. Kezia was not supposed to read it, but she did. It said, "Your daughter's fees for the full academic year have been settled by the Yusuf Foundation. No further payment is required." When Baba Yusuf came home that evening, she showed him the letter. He read it, set it down on the table, and said, "Good. What did you learn in school today?" She stared at him. "Baba, the Yusuf Foundation." He looked up with eyes that held nothing and everything. "Is that not our name?" He made tea. He did not explain further. He never explained further. The night before Kezia left for the University of Ghana at Legon, Baba Yusuf came to her room and sat on the edge of the bed, the way he had since she was small. In his palm was a watch. She had seen it on his wrist her entire childhood. It was old even then. Scratched face. The crystal clouded, the second hand moving in its patient circle. "This watch," he said, "belonged to my father, and before that to his." He set it in her palm. It was heavier than it looked. "It has not kept perfect time in 40 years. Then why does the second hand still move?" she asked. He smiled, that particular smile, the one that carried more than a smile can hold, because it knows the difference between broken and finished. "Those are not the same thing." He closed her fingers around it. "One day the world will try to lock you out of everything you are. When it does, remember whose child you are." She pressed it against her chest the moment he stood up to leave. She was 24, working at an urban planning firm in Accra, when she met Lekan. He had come in as a junior associate on a housing project. He did not know her last name on the day they met. He knew only that she laughed at something he said about parking spaces, and the laugh was real, and real laughter was rare enough that he remembered it. He was struggling then, honest about his debts in the quiet way people are when the debts are still manageable. He was trying. He had plans. She believed in the plans because she had seen what patience could build. She wore the watch on her left wrist on their wedding day. Her father held both her hands at the door of the reception hall and looked at her a long time. "I won't be in the front row," he said, "but I'll be closer than you think. I always have been." She thought he meant it tenderly. Later she would understand he had meant it precisely. Lekan's consulting firm lasted 4 years before the contracts dried. By year 3, Kezia had found the drawer. It was in his study. She had not been looking for anything. She was searching for a pen. But the drawer was full of envelopes with red text, bank notices, a letter from a guarantor who wanted to be released. She closed the drawer and said nothing. She transferred money from her own account the following morning and said nothing. Vivienne came into Lekan's life through a business pitch. She had capital he needed, a network he wanted, and an opinion about his wife that she shared with him over dinner. The second time they met, the opinion was, "You are the only one who cannot see that she is holding you back." There is a particular cruelty in telling a drowning man that the hand-pulling him up is the reason he cannot swim. Lekan heard it and called it wisdom. That was the morning he stopped seeing Kezia clearly. He did not lose his sight all at once. He simply began preferring the dark. Mama Stella had always spoken the way people cut bread, in measured strokes. Never rushed, each slice exact. The first real blade came at a Sunday lunch the year before the promotion dinner. Mama Stella had looked at Kezia's plate, then at her close-cropped hair, then said slowly, "I just think there is something to be said for a woman who takes care of herself." Who makes an effort? Some men need to come home to beauty, not a library. Ife had been filming something on her phone. She did not put it down. What no one at that table knew, Kezia had paid the hospital bill when Mama Stella had her knee surgery in 2021. She had done it quietly, through a fund she managed privately, because Lecan's account was overdrawn and she had not wanted him to feel the shame of it. She had kept 6 months of household rent current through his longest dry spell. She had fielded calls from contractors at midnight, creditors at dawn. She had been the wall between his life and its consequences, and she had built that wall with her own hands, and she had never once asked for a receipt. His silence at the table when his mother spoke was the loudest voice in the room. The papers arrived on a Tuesday morning. Lecan slid them across the kitchen table while she was standing at the counter with coffee. She had not yet drunk. "Just some account reorganization," he said. "The lawyer says it's routine. Sign where the tabs are." She picked up the document. She read every page. She was a planner by training. She read the way engineers read blueprints, looking for what was load-bearing. What she found was the transfer of joint property into a sole instrument in his name. Her name removed from the cantonment's apartment. Her name removed from the vehicle agreement. A severance clause dressed as a standard exit arrangement. She set the pen down. "Lecan," she said. "I know what this is." He said nothing. She picked the pen back up. She signed, not because she was deceived and not because she was weak. She signed because she needed the lesson to complete itself. Some things must reach their full size before they can be properly measured. That night she sat on the bathroom floor of the guest room she had been quietly sleeping in for 2 months. The light was off. The only light was the thin line under the door from the hallway. She pressed the watch against her face, the cool metal of it against her cheekbone. She could feel the second hand moving through the casing, patient, faithful, not knowing it was being held, just moving. "Baba," she whispered to the dark. "I don't know how to do this alone." The second hand kept moving. She sat there until she ran out of tears, and then a little longer, until she ran out of the sound that comes before tears. Then she stood. She washed her face. She dried it carefully. She packed 1 bag, not 2, not a suitcase. 1 bag, with what was actually hers. Not what had been accumulated. What was hers from the beginning. By morning she was dressed and composed in a way that made the housekeeper look away when she passed. Some stillness frightens people because it is not peace. It is decision. Back on Harper Road, back to tonight. Lecan's car had turned the corner 9 minutes ago. The guests had filtered out of the Asante Grand Hotel in 1s and 2s, some pretending they had not seen, some too shaken to perform normal. A small knot of them remained on the pavement, Eve still with her phone, Mama Stella with her handbag held in front of her like a shield. Kezia was standing 30 meters up the road. Then the sound came first. A low, continuous sound, like the approach of something that does not need to announce itself, because it has never needed to. 6 black SUVs turned onto Harper Road in a single formation. Spaced, deliberate, headlights burning white in the evening air, though the sun had not yet fully set. They did not rush. They moved the way consequence moves, without hurry, without doubt, taking up the full width of the road. The small crowd on the pavement went completely still. Ife's phone dropped to her side. She had forgotten she was holding it. The lead vehicle stopped. The door opened. Mr. Boateng stepped out. He was a man of perhaps 65, silver-haired, dark suit, carrying a cane he walked beside but did not lean on. He moved across the road with the bearing of someone who has spent decades in rooms where other people argued and has never once needed to raise his voice to end the argument. He stopped in front of Kezia. He addressed her, clearly, deliberately, loud enough for the remaining crowd to hear. Not as Mrs. Adesanya, not as Lecan's wife, not by any name that had ever been assigned to her by anyone else's life. "Miss Kezia Yusuf," he said, "your father sent me." That name, Yusuf, landed on Harper Road the way heavy things land. Not with noise, with weight. Lecan, who had returned around the corner when someone called him, went completely still. His hand, which had been mid-gesture, stopped. Mama Stella's face lost its architecture. Just for a moment, the certainty drained out of it. Eve looked at her phone, then at the convoy, then at her phone. She did not press record. Mr. Boateng spoke quietly, but on that silent street, quietly was enough. "Your father built this city's eastern corridor," he said. "The Yusuf development. Trust holds land title on 37 commercial properties across Kumasi and Accra, including the Asante Grand Hotel on Harper Road." He paused. He let that sentence breathe. He seeded the trust that rebuilt the Adam water infrastructure in 2009. He financed the Legon endowment that paid for 1,200 scholarships over 20 years, one of which, though he never told you, had your name attached before you were old enough to apply. His voice changed in the next sentence. It became something denser. He never told anyone because he was a man who believed that the value of a thing is not proved by announcing it. He looked at Kezia with eyes that had been carrying this day for years. He was the quietest large man I have ever known. Miss Yusuf, and he built where no one could see. Kezia already knew, the way the body sometimes knows before the mind will allow it. Mr. Boateng reached inside his jacket and withdrew an envelope. Cream-colored, her name on the front in her father's handwriting. "He passed this morning," he said. "In his sleep, peacefully." He exhaled once. "His last instruction to me, his exact words, which I wrote down because I knew I would need to say them correctly, were, 'Go and get my daughter today. Do not make her wait one more hour.'" He held the letter out. She looked at it for a long moment before she took it. She did not open it there on Harper Road. She pressed it, unopened, against her chest with both hands. The crowd watched a woman receive news that broke and crowned her in the same breath. Not a sound, just the tears themselves, arriving steadily, without announcement, the way rain begins in certain seasons. She stood on Harper Road with the letter in one hand and the broken watch in the other, both pressed to the center of her chest. And she cried in the open air while 40 people watched, and not one of them spoke. Mr. Boateng stepped to her side. He did not embrace her. He simply stood beside her, close enough to hold her up if her knees decided to release. He bent his head toward her ear. "He never stopped watching over you," he said. "Every dark car you ever noticed on your hardest days, everyone you saw outside the hospital, outside the bank on this road tonight, that was him. He was always there. He could not always come to you, but he never once looked away." The second hand on the broken watch kept moving, patient, faithful, not knowing it was being held. Lekan stepped into the street. He called her name, one word, one syllable, cracked somewhere in the middle of it where his voice broke under the weight of what he was finally understanding. Kezia turned her head toward the sound. Her eyes found him in the space between the vehicles. She looked at him, the way you look at a place you are leaving, fully and without malice. One long, complete look. Then she turned back to Mr. Boateng and said something quiet that made him nod. To the crowd watching, it appeared that a stranger had called the wrong name, and she had checked, and it had not been hers. She did not raise her voice. She did not explain herself. She offered no expression that could be photographed or quoted. The crowd swung from her to him, all of them, in one slow collective movement, and Lekan felt 40 pairs of eyes land on him the way light lands on something that has been trying to stay in the dark. Mama Stella was inside the car that had been brought around for her. She had pressed her right palm flat against the window glass and was looking out at the convoy on Harper Road. Her face had the look of a woman doing arithmetic she has run 3 times and cannot make come out differently. Ife was beside her. The phone was in her hand, but the screen faced the seat. Her mouth was slightly open, not to speak, just open, the way a door is open, when the person who should be walking through it has not arrived. Vivian stood apart from the family near the hotel entrance. She had removed her sunglasses. She held them in one hand, folded, and was very still. She was a woman who had walked into a room believing she understood its dimensions. She was now revising those dimensions significantly, and the revision was not going in her favor. None of them spoke. None of them moved. The street had made its own judgment, and they were standing in it. Kezia spoke to Mr. Boateng, calm. The calmness of someone who has arrived somewhere after a very long walk. "Take me to Ose Lane," she said. "My father's house. Nowhere else tonight." He nodded. He opened the door of the lead vehicle. She put one foot on the step. Then she turned her head, not to look at Lekan, but at the street itself, at the people who had witnessed this evening beginning to end. She spoke one sentence, not loudly, not performing, simply leaving the truth where it could be found. "A man cannot throw you out of what was never his to give." The door closed. The sound of it was complete and final, the sound of something sealing rather than something ending. The convoy moved. He was still in the middle of Harper Road long after. The last tail light had turned. The corner and the sound of the engines had dissolved into the Kumasi evening. Mama Stella called his name from the car window. He did not hear her, or perhaps he heard her, and it no longer sounded the way names are supposed to sound. He was a man standing in the specific silence that follows a life reordering itself around a truth he had been given every opportunity to learn differently. He looked at the asphalt. He found 3 cracks in it. He studied them without meaning to. He could not raise his eyes. The narrator says this, and says it plainly. Some men have to lose everything before they understand they were already holding it. And by then the hands are empty, and the road is very long, and no convoy is coming for them. Inside the lead car, when the lights of Adam began to pass outside the window, she unfolded the envelope. His handwriting was the same as it had always been, deliberate, tilted slightly forward. The letters of her name written the way he had written it on her school projects, her birthday cards, her university acceptance letter that he had framed and never told her he kept. The paper smelled faintly of the cedar cabinet. In his study on Ose Lane, the place where he had always kept the things that mattered. She read slowly. She read one line 4 times. She would not say later which line, but it was not about the properties, or the trust, or the accounts, or the buildings with her family's name on their foundations. It was about a little girl with a broken solar system in a bag, sitting at a kitchen table, learning that what cannot be seen cannot be stolen. He had signed it the way he signed everything. Baba Yusuf, your first and permanent home. There is a kind of wealth the world cannot appraise because it refuses to display itself. It does not arrive in show. It does not seek permission. It simply is, rooted, quiet, patient across decades, until the day comes when the ground opens, and what was planted in darkness rises into full light. Baba Yusuf built where no one could see. He harvested nothing for himself. He gave his daughter a broken watch that still ran and told her, "These are not the same thing." And when the world tried to measure her with instruments, too small for what she carried, she did not correct them. She let them finish. She let the lesson complete itself. Because a woman who knows the size of what she holds does not waste breath explaining it to the people, who will learn it anyway. If this story found you today, it found you for a reason. Some of you are sitting with that right now, carrying something no one around you can see. Hold it. Wait. The door opens for you and nobody else. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We go deep every single week. Drop a comment below. What did she do right that you wish someone in your life would do? And type where you are watching from. I read every single one.